So now it's time to reflect. And I want you to think about the four characteristics we just discussed of quality, high quality relationships. And now go back to that teacher, that person that you have that high quality relationship with, and think of how did that person exhibit each of those four characteristics. So for instance, for attunement, how is that teacher or coach very sensitive to you and your needs? Highly attuned teachers have a great idea about how to listen to you, how to interact with you, because they read or learn to read facial expressions and body languages, and they can even predict of what students will do next. They also make a special effort to be, aware of what their students actually need. The relatedness. So how did that teacher or coach or person, make you feel special and connect with them? Energizing you, wanting to come to class, wanting to come to school, and calm, those negative emotions or anxieties. How are they supportive in your capacity for self-direction? How did they help you achieve those goals and those, outcomes? But they were supportive, not only in the school sense, but from an emotional sense and as a person. How do they make you more engaged in learning? And then finally is the gentle discipline. So instead of reprimanding you over something, perhaps, was there a walk and talk associated with that? Or did they, explain to you vividly why something was or wasn't, corrected you on that way? So think about who that teacher or coach or person was. And then also as educators or clinicians, how can we demonstrate these in our own settings, not just even as in a school sense, but perhaps at home or in our actions with others and friends. So in applying our reflection and looking back, I also want to kind of ask you to, pick out which is the most challenging high quality relationship component that is most challenging for you as a parent, as a teacher, as a coach, as a leader, and to be honest with yourself and knowing that that's an area that you need to focus on. How can you develop and enhance this quality? Do you lack support or help to guide somebody in some ways? Or relatedness, are you unable to connect with their emotions or what they're feeling? You think but you really don't know or can't read people so well. Something else I want to introduce you to is similar to the Myers-Briggs personality survey, is another one called the Northeast Southwest or directional survey, and I'll post it up on CourseDen for you to see. But pick a direction that you most associate with. For instance, North people are the let's do it, likes to act, try things, plunge in, no think about it, let's just do it. Eastern people are speculating. They like to look at the big picture before acting or agreeing to something. Southern people, not just us that live in the South, but they're caring. They like to know everyone's feelings to be taken into consideration before acting on something. And then the West people like paying attention to the detail of who, what, when, where, why, knowing everything before agreeing to participate in something. So taking these personality traits and applying them to your students or to your clients or to your children, and understanding that, an East personality is going to conflict with certainly a West personality or even a North personality. And understanding how can you apply these personalities to your students and better comprehend who they are as people, what stirs them up, what brings them down, what are their strengths, what are their challenges. And you as a teacher need to learn, how to embody and how to embrace what they do well, what Northerners do well versus Westerners do well, and understanding your children to be a better educator in the long run. Let's talk briefly about low quality relationships and what those would look like, or why are they so significant? But they're characterized by neglect, of course. But those that have high neglect of indifference, lack of support, lack of involvement, abuse, so insensitivity, rejection, hostility. But they also embody not only physical abuse, but verbal abuse and neglect, especially in the classroom. Verbal abuse from teachers includes chronic ridiculing, teasing, scolding, name-calling, public humiliation in front of others, or yelling at students, or ignoring students on a routine basis. And I'm not talking about, small little incidents. I'm talking about consistent incidences. But more commonly, however, is that students' perception of a teacher's lack of fairness. So, for instance, unusually harsh discipline, lower than deserving grades, rigidity, or disrespectfulness of their race, gender, or academic ability is what leads them to perceive a low-quality relationship with that teacher and decreased interest in school in the long run. So, consider how you may be portraying those low quality relationships with students, or why you might be experiencing that or feeling that way, because we also want to foster a welcoming climate, a open climate for students, and to build high quality relationships, not those low quality relationships that are troublesome and really challenging. So time to reflect and look back. How do educators demonstrate low quality relationships? What do they actually do? And I kind of mentioned ones in the previous slides, but certainly humiliation or downplaying is so important. The Dunes cap here that you might have seen before, or the Duns cap, I'm sorry, was something that used to be used way back in the day that promoted or discouraged off-task behavior. And the idea was that from the point here all the way down was to disseminate information and learning. So you're humiliated, but you learn from your mistakes, and now you are a better person as a result. But what we do know through research, humiliation is not motivating, is not helpful for students, and that it actually can be very hurtful. I'll never forget when I was doing my field experience for special education. I took a couple classes, and I had to go and observe special ed teachers, and I saw, I think, one of the worst situations possible, where there was yelling, there was humiliation, there was a lot of put downs. They would yell at the students that they got off task. And while I realized that special ed students do have special needs or different ways to be received and to convey information, the put downs and humiliations were not. So please, as a teacher, as a coach, as a clinician, knowing that these behaviors that you maybe feel are not the way to deal with children, or not the way to deal with them at all. One other situation or a movie you might laugh at, but Kindergarten Cop certainly had a few of these characteristics initially, because he was not trained into being a full-fledged teacher, but as a cop, and how we would deal with regular human beings outside the world of education. But think about that. Think about who demonstrated a low quality relationship to you, and how you can prevent that in the future for you and your students. In the classroom, research shows that teacher-student relationships has long-term and enduring ramifications on the students' later school functioning and achievement. So actually, the responsibility to get the relationship started off on the right foot does belong to the teacher, and I'll explain why. When interaction partners, so for instance, you and a student differ in perceived status or power, so those based on age, authority, social position, expertise, etc., the higher status person, which would actually be the teacher, is expected, even somewhat obliged, to initiate that conversation, to talk, to make suggestions for that lower status person, that student, to follow. So it is taking upon, in the slogan sense, be the bigger person, and to reach out for that smaller, lesser person, not in stature, but certainly in years and perhaps expertise. So as a teacher, you need to reach out and initiate that conversation to better enhance that relationship. Research shows that that is a huge component that students need today. And the last thing to consider here is the culture, diversity, and special needs. So sometimes we need to understand that socialization goals take precedence. For instance, parents in authoritative families, or those that emphasize strict discipline, to such an extent that their children come from, very strict discipline focused homes as a more appropriate than the general discipline that we talked about before. That might be their preferred, and that's how it is. Other families might heavily prioritize, school success, academic achievement over social success and social development. Likewise, some cultures strongly value respect for one's elders and therefore want to see relationships characterized by adult direction rather than by adult supportiveness. So just be aware in the diverse school environments and clinic environments that we live in, that just because a child is not exhibiting appropriate social behavior, it's not just perhaps something that child is feeling, but what that child is brought up and what is accepted in the home and the culture and the general environment. And some special needs children have difficulty in giving love and attention, or excuse me, love and affection to interaction partners. So what we do know is that generally those children with learning disabilities typically report a greater dissatisfaction with those relationships, and have some, risk for social emotional problems and maladjustment just in not being able to connect with their teachers so well. And whether that's due to lack of education or lack in social skills, they suffer so much more than the average student. So when they don't believe they have a high quality relationship with their teacher, they're less inclined to even oblige to general protocols and academic work. So you need to show them that much more care and compassion to build that high quality relationship than so that child can achieve gains in their social, emotional, and academic achievements. So much more impactful with the special needs children. And what I suggest, or what has been documented by research, is to actually just do a walk and talk. So in relating to cultural priorities, if you notice a student is acting a certain way and you've corrected them, perhaps there's something else deeper underneath there of how they act at home, or what is accepted in home life or cultural life. And even for special needs children, getting to know them a little bit more on a personal level. So at recess, during lunch, or during a quiet activity, maybe not a walk and talk, but how can you pull that child aside and just get to know them and get to know the person beneath what is being portrayed, the behavior that is being portrayed that we want to assist them with.